Welcome into this week's The Women's Basketball Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things women's college basketball, WNBA, oh so much more. That's not SB Nation's Mitchell Northam. That's Iowa News Now reporter / chief meteorologist, Rebecca Kopelman, friend of the program. Yes, you've heard us mention her before. Our wonderful producer, Dimitri, came up with the ingenious idea of why don't we have Rebecca pinch hit while Mitch is on vacation. We worked together for 3 years in Iowa. We're best buds. We've never done a podcast before. This is about to be electric. I'm so excited.
I feel like it's more so just like I'm getting thrown a bone because all I do is text you about things that are going on in the W and women's basketball. And then you're like, I'm at the beach right now, Rebecca, but I'll check in later. We get to let it all out.
I'm so excited. Loyal listener to the pod as well. So you've heard us reference Rebecca if you listen to this. In case it's the first time you're listening, or in case you haven't heard us reference Rebecca before, tell us, Reba, a little bit about yourself, your origin story when it comes to your women's basketball fandom and involvement.
Yeah, I met Mia almost 10 years ago, which is pretty wild.
Don't even say that.
Right? And that's how long I've been in Iowa. And I have been a meteorologist here, moved from Florida to enjoy the lovely weather we have here in Iowa. And I have a probably similar story to a lot of women's basketball fans right now that, you know, I kind of like Caitlin a little bit. And I think that one thing that has been really unique to that whole journey is the fact that I have taken it in. I have enjoyed watching all of the women's basketball and watching Unrivaled, watching the NCAA tournament, even when, you know, Iowa is out of it, and watching all of the different things like Unrivaled and just getting to know all of these other players. And I'm like, at the point where I wish I could go back in time and watch the W from the beginning. We could. Can we? Is it somewhere?
Oh,
Probably.
yeah. It's definitely archived on YouTube or something. Like you could go back and watch Dawn and the Comets. And oh, yeah, you could absolutely.
We need to do that.
Yeah.
But I obviously loyally follow the Fever and Caitlin, but I do enjoy watching all the teams. And when the Fever aren't playing, and I guess the Lynx, we're in a Minnesota household after all too, I'm just like, I want everybody to have fun. I want everybody to win. I never know who to root for. I feel like at this point in the season, we're starting to get an idea of who to root for. But it's been a lot of fun to really get into the world of women's basketball.
And no one keeps tabs better than you, Reba. So I'm so excited to dive into the biggest storylines this week in the world of women's basketball. Let's begin, as we do each and every week here on the Women's Basketball Podcast, with our Her of the Week. This one I don't think needs any introduction. Sonia Citron, Rookie of the Year. Stop the count right now. She will be your winner. And I don't want to say that because it's June 23rd as we're recording this podcast, but another game winner for the Washington Mystics, 3rd overall pick. And look, Reba, like this is a player who played third fiddle, if you may, to the likes of Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo a season ago. As it's been reported by The Athletic, many executives around the W actually thought that Sonia was the best WNBA prospect in this past April's draft class, better than Paige Beckers because of her 3-and-D ability. And that's now translating to the W. And the Washington Mystics, as I've said a time or two on this podcast before, are my team to watch in the W in 2025.
And I think it's so interesting because a lot of times when you go through this, you know, rebuilding phase, a lot of times teams struggle to find that rhythm akin to, you know, maybe the Dallas Wings and last year's Fever team, but something's clicking. And I kind of noticed that one player like Stephanie Dolson, who would normally be starting every game, has hardly been getting minutes, and it doesn't seem to affect them, but their maybe record doesn't reflect how good they are, but they've had some really tight games, and they let Dallas come back this past weekend and then battled into overtime and just dominated. And Sonia was a huge part of that.
Don't worry, Dallas Wings. We will have the apology to Coach K, Coach Chris, the real Coach K, as many are saying. But Sonia Citron in that overtime 91-88 victory over the Dallas Wings on Sunday played 41 minutes, 27 points, 11 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals. I mean, she's doing a little bit of everything, and she is this week's Her of the Week. Now it's time for the starting five, the five biggest storylines this week in the world of women's basketball. Rebecca, start us off. This is something you brought to my attention that I'd seen in passing, but some interesting news on the forefront with the CBA negotiations looming in the W.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I will give a shout out to Justice Collins on TikTok. I love her content. She keeps it real 100% of the time, but she brought up that that Sid Colson, there we go, was back at Vegas. They did a tribute video to her. She was very emotional, obviously. A reporter came up to her and asked her, what was, what's it like being back? And she was like, it's great to be back, but there are more pressing things going on, and started reading a statement about the CBA, and in part says, I want to be clear that we remain committed to negotiating the next CBA with the league and the teams in good faith, and privately we do want to set the record straight, not for headlines, but for the fans who support us and deserve transparency about what's at stake. This is a defining moment for the league, and we're fighting for a fair share of the business that we built. And there's a long statement that they have basically given the all of the women in the league that they've been reciting, and that goes from Sophie Cunningham recited it to a reporter, and multiple others, Tip Hayes also, and there was also a note from Nneka Ogwumike, who is the president of the Players Association, who then said that their talks are on track, and she's hoping for some good talks when they're in Indy for the All-Star break. And what's interesting that Justice brought up was, why are they putting the statement out there? Is it because everything's not going the right way? But then Nneka's saying that they're on the right track. So it's just kind of interesting because especially for Sid, it's going to be like, there are more pressing things going on. But I think that they're trying to bring to light to everybody that maybe doesn't follow super close attention that these negotiations are going on. They have this huge disparity, obviously, that we know with salaries. It's not going to change overnight, or with probably the CBA, but these women deserve a bigger piece of the pie here than what they're getting.
Yeah, and obviously the WNBA All-Star game about a month away. So maybe this is Nneka and the rest of the executive board of the WNBA Players Association saying, okay, it's time to, start upping the ante, and perhaps just dropping any hints whenever you can, and reminding people that this is something that's going to be voted on and that's going to have to be adopted here in the next, certainly discussed and voted on in a month, but also going to be put into effect here in the next year or so. And so, yeah, I think it's a calculated move. I think it's also interesting. And Mitch and I have discussed this on the pod, given the Seattle Storm of it all, which still also remains unresolved, exactly what is going on with Ogwumike's team and some of the allegations that have been brought about intimidation and bullying within that organization. So yeah, there's also that. So maybe Nneka was just like, hey fam, we got to get some good publicity out there, which I'm here for. You got to do that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's, everyone knows that it's growing and we see the numbers, but then it doesn't mean that automatically all these women are getting the money or getting, they're not making money off of their jerseys being sold. And they're not making the same amount of money that, Caitlin and Asia are making off of all their brand deals. But it's all these other women that, you may not think of as the star, but they're helping your team win, that also deserve to be paid fairly. So hopefully those negotiations do go well.
Let's get it to the on the court drama. Paige Bueckers, the Dallas Wings, went to overtime against the Washington Mystics, and Paige has now put up a 30-piece and a 40-piece in her last two games out. I would also like to, on the behalf of myself and Mitchell Northam, issue an apology for Chris Koklanis. Arike too. Arike we'll get to here in a second, because we also, Rebecca, we also are going to do a stock up, stock down segment as part of our main event today. And I think Arike Ogumawale may make a appearance in that stock up, stock down segment one way or another. But to that point, we literally entitled last week's podcast, Everybody Hates Chris, because he was winning the Chris Seasides Memorial Award. We have now said he's not the PE teacher like her, though. He's Matthew McConaughey cosplaying as a yoga instructor. Hey, listen, his team's been hanging around the last week or so. And so maybe we just need to, if we complain about you on this podcast, evidently you might turn in a nice solid effort.
Perhaps. I think it was a very impressive turnaround that happened because both Arike and Paige were very slow on the shooting front. And I think, I mean, not even like really making shots or taking any shots really. And then just took off. And I look back at the score and I was like, well, oh, okay. I was not expecting that to happen. So he must got something up his sleeve.
I was wrong. Paige had 35 against the Mercury, not 40. I thought she had
Close.
40. She played 40 minutes in the overtime loss to the
There you
Mystics.
go.
She's had every single game she has played outside of the preseason in her WNBA career. She's averaged double figures in scoring, which is massive for someone who many believe would be the presumptive rookie of the year as the number 1 overall pick. 3 straight 20-point performances in the 2 wins over Golden State, as well as the loss against the Washington Mystics in overtime in the DMV with her friend AZ Fudd in attendance in a Georgia
Amore jersey. There was a really funny picture of Paige in the distance with just looking on with like Georgia walked over and just gave her the jersey. So it was pretty good.
Stay trolling. I mean, look, she had who designed Georgia's? It was not Lil Wayne. Who designed her outfit at the Russell Westbrook. Sure. Russell Westbrook designed her outfit.
Oh, yes.
Getting Lil Wayne on the brain because Travis Hunter finally signed his deal. There's your Jaguars update of the episode. Let's keep it moving with this Reba, because we talk about Paige Beckers, we've talked about Sonia Citron. They are far from the only rookies who have impressed so far.
Yeah, I mean, it has been impressive for a class that I think everybody was kind of like, oh, this doesn't have as many names as I recognize from last year's class, and maybe people kind of underestimated them, but I think that especially the way that the W is right now, you have a lot of rookies who are making some waves here. Maybe it has to do with, the rebuilding. Perhaps it has to do with, the just ridiculous amount of injuries going on. But players like Aaliyah Nye, who came in to the Vegas game and unfortunately just kind of put a dagger in that one for the Fever, but just really, really impressive there. And then she's been knocking them down and getting a lot of minutes, which almost like the Kate Martin last year that Becky Hammon was giving her that time and letting her cook. And then you have Kiki, obviously, along with Sonia on the Washington Mystics, who has just been killing it on the boards and just, I mean, it's so impressive scoring, finishing, on defense, just everything. And then one of our faves, Anissa Morrow, who had an impressive game and then got a start in the last game. I think scored in double digits the last 2 games she's been in. Tina Pow currently leading the league in 3-point percentage. The league in 3-point percentage. I think like 57%. So pretty impressive there. Lexi Held before she was injured, doing it in Mercury for the Phoenix Mercury. Obviously, Paige, Caitlin Chen also
is back.
She's back. She got her first points in the W, and it was an and one. And then I think she got a tech in that game.
Yeah, she did. She got her first point and her first tech in the same 3-minute sequence. It's fine.
Make a statement. It's fine. And then in other news, of course, we mentioned AZ Fudd, but the real hard launch of her posting a photo with her phone case that said Paige Becker's girlfriend, with a sticker in the mirror, getting her hair done. And
I'm wondering if we should have made that its own topic in the starting 5 this week. But I like that we're trying to just sneak it in as part of our rookie update.
Yeah, it's in the rookie update. I think it's important. And I think Paige has been playing well since that happened. So, it's all the secrets are out. It's almost like the, Asia and,
Bam. Which, did you see what Bam tweeted about her outfit? Big Steppa from, I guess it's from Madagascar or Zootopia or something like that. I don't know. That's what he said Asia's outfit for Sunday's game looked like. And then he tweeted that out. And I'm so over the crypticness. Just tell us, put it this way. She gets the key to the city in her hometown, and there's one other person outside of her parents and her grandmother there, and it's Bam Adebayo. That doesn't randomly just happen. Just
well, when she was on concussion protocol, she also
was with Bam.
Was with him in the stands. I mean, I think we all know. But now Bam needs to come out with a sticker on his phone that says Asia Wilson's boyfriend.
That mic drop right then and there. Well done.
Just
Well done,
saying.
Rebecca. Let's keep it moving. We mentioned the Fever stink. I'm sensing a trend that whenever we reference them on this program, they tend to start losing. It wasn't just a loss. It was their 16th in a row to the Las Vegas Aces, the only team that swept Caitlin Clark's Fever in her rookie season. It is now tied for the second longest winning streak for the Aces against one single WNBA team. The longest, Los Angeles, is 18 in a row against Minnesota from 99 to 2004. LA also won 16 straight against the Phoenix Mercury during that time, too. Thank you, Michael Vopel of ESPN, for that stat. So, yeah, things are not great in Indianapolis right now. We can certainly dive in from that vantage point, Rebecca. But I did want to note one of our favorites here on this pod. We love Courtney Williams. We stand Courtney Williams, the ultimate Mia Rebecca pipeline, because she's from Folkestone, Georgia, down here in the Southeast. I covered Charlton County High School, where she went to high school. And now she plays for the Minnesota Lynx up there in the north, in the country, in the Midwest. And we love Courtney. And on Courtney's pod, she said that while some will look at the all-star voting results so far and they will say, my God, all those crazy Caitlin Clark fans are just voting for Fever players, Courtney Williams noted, like, this is a movement and you have to respect it. You have to respect the elevated profile because of what Caitlin Clark has done in bringing more fans to the W, introducing them to players like Aaliyah Boston, like Lexi Hull. We're here on this podcast for Lexi Hull, Most Improved Player, Sixth Woman of the Year. And so, I want to salute Courtney for that, but also I'm very worried about the Indiana Fever.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, hashtag stud buds, amazing. They're incredible. But the Fever, yeah, it's been a little rough patch, and it's
which might
been
like real quick. 2 weeks ago, Mitch and I were like, oh my God, it's awful. And then last week we were like, they're back. They're the greatest thing of all time. And now we're back to, my God, CC doesn't look like she's even interested.
Well, and I think that that's kind of part of the thing here, because the sentiment from fans that are on Reddit, which is probably not the best,
okay, we got some Reddit Randys in the chat here. We're good.
Temperature of what's going on out there, but it's, there's a sense of just this kind of like, well, we thought we were building this great team and getting this great coach, and you were hoping for that consistency, and then there's a lot of discussion about Caitlin shooting, and to your point, she drops this massive triple-double and breaks the Liberty's perfect record, and we're all just like, oh my goodness, and then comes into Golden State, who, I mean, was anyone expecting an expansion team to do what they're doing, and part of their team, like half their team's playing Eurobasket right now? So, like, of course not. But they come in and beat the Fever, and then you have, this almost dominant performance over the Aces, where they were leading the game, the majority of the game, and then just, and there is almost this disinterested kind of look. And I don't know, it's so much easier said than done when you're like, just keep into it, or you gotta get your mind right and stay into it,
girl. It's gonna fall for you. Like, yeah,
it's hard. But I will say, compared to last year, like, Caitlin's definitely she was still shooting, and her last two games she had a almost triple-double and then a double-double, and had double-digit scoring, which was considered a bad game for her. Yeah, the shooting wasn't great, and then you saw the difference between what happened with Asia and what happened with Caitlin in that game, where Asia was going 2 for 12 in the first half and then exploded, but Caitlin just could not seem to get that shot to fall, and still is, as we discussed, more than 3-point shooting, and still some of her passes I'm just like floored by, which is a big part of her game too. But yeah, she does contribute so much in terms of the energy to that team, and I think that's one thing in terms of the maturity with her, is making sure that she is conscious of how she is coming off. And that is probably a lot more easier said than done. I know that's something that Bluter talked about when she was at Iowa, like videotaping her and showing her what her expressions were like. There's also been discussion of, if you watch back some of the press, she does sound like she's maybe under the weather. Does that excuse anything? No, but it's, you also have whatever's going on with Duana, who is part of that veteran leadership, and whatever's been going on with Stephanie. And there's been a lot of inconsistencies in that locker room. And so there could be a lot going on behind the scenes that's contributing to all of this. Obviously, like Stephanie said in the post game yesterday, she's like, I'm not worried about Caitlin's shot. And people go through shooting slumps, and she'll turn it around. It's not the end of the world. She still had 19 points.
She still was 7 of 20. Like, she took 20 shots.
Right. At least, and that's the thing. She's still shooting, which is important for her to keep going at it. But yeah, it's tough when that shot doesn't fall, obviously. And then how does that contribute to the downfall of the game? I don't know. But the Aces were also on a 3-game
losing streak.
Yeah. And Asia just got back in the game prior from the concussion protocol. So, I mean, she was due for something.
It was classic trap game.
Classic.
Just happened to come off of another loss to the Golden State Valkyries. And also, since we mentioned that Aces stat, Kate Martin now 6-0 in her WNBA career against Caitlin Clark, which is, for me, the stat that sticks out, and it's funny given the fact that I'm wearing, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm wearing an Oklahoma City Thunder shirt right now. Listen, I just hope everybody had fun last night, although obviously we didn't because Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. The reason I bring that up, the knock on Tyrese Halliburton is the stinkers, inevitably, 1 or 2 games in which he doesn't eclipse 10 points in a playoff series. But at the same time, in many of those games, he was approaching a double-double in the rebounding and assists department. And that, for me, is where I say you're contributing to the game in other facets, especially at the point guard position or the shooting guard, whichever you want to classify Tyrese as. And I'm okay with that. And so to that same point, Mitch and I have made this point a lot in the last few weeks. When Caitlin missed 5 games, Aaliyah Boston was taking anywhere between 5 to 10 less shots per game than what she was averaging when Caitlin was on the floor. And now you look at a stat line from Aaliyah where she's 12 of 19 for 26 points, and everyone wants to say that she's the only one who showed up and contributed to the group project. I say she doesn't have that many shot opportunities if CC isn't threading the needle to her. And so as long as Caitlin is still producing on that end of the floor, we once again return to where we were 1 year ago, which is this conversation of, is the coach trying to coach the shooter out of her because they're so focused on making her a point guard? I don't think it's as abrasive as perhaps Christy Sides was a year ago, where it was very much, she needs to be a pass first point guard. It was almost like Kim Mulkey to HVL back in the day. And I don't think that's the case with Steph. I would also say, and Caitlin noted this in some post games over the last week or so, that she feels like she's doing better after losses. Like last year when they would lose, she would be devastated and be emotionally distraught. I saw it in the game I went to against the Dallas Wings. She set the single game assist record in the W, and she ran off the court just throwing her towel, upset, and not in a demeaning, but just a clearly frustrated way. And the fact that she's well, I'm managing that better, but there's now this critique of, but she looks disinterested. I think it's just her compensating to not make it look like she's losing her mind with whatever's going on.
I agree. And I think that there's a lot of criticism around her body language, and there's certainly still some pieces of it. There was, I think, one clip from a game or 2 ago where Natasha Howard, she was on that hot streak in the Liberty game, I think, shooting those threes, and Natasha Howard got the ball in the post and was battling against a defender and just went for it. Caitlin kind of threw her arms up and was I think mostly it's she's rarely so open that she's just hey. But I do think that there is a lot more to it than, I don't think she's disinterested, because we know the kind of player that she is. And I think there's just so much hyper focus on her that maybe if you pay attention to other players, it may not always be that way. But I will say on one last note that Kelsey Plum was on Lisa Leslie's podcast and was saying how she realized, especially getting into the league, that she had to bring this intensity the entire time she was in order to, win the possession and to win these games. You have to just fully be in it. And I'm sure sometimes when your shot's not falling and things are not going your way, that it can be hard to continue to do that the entire time, especially when we thought, maybe Caitlin was going to have to play the entire game. But she's getting some rest, but then you usually see the scores start to change when that happens. So yeah, I digress.
Your weekly Caitlin Clark update, weekly Indiana Fever update. It's a roller coaster ride, folks. Buckle up. Rebecca, how about you round out this week's starting 5 with a little bit more of a discussion with regards to the All-Star voting?
Yeah, and so you mentioned it a little bit with Courtney Williams. And
Stud
so I will
buds.
say, stud buds, I will say that there's been this discussion because the Fever, really took over in the fan voting. We know that Sophie Cunningham's like jersey sold out after the whole, altercation and such. And there's been all that going on, however you feel about that. But when we look at the numbers, and you go back to 2023, Asia got around 36,000 votes, 36 with 3 zeros. Last year, Asia had 217,000. Caitlin had 216,000. This year, 500,000 votes for Caitlin.
Just Caitlin, not the rest. Not the rest of the list. Just Caitlin.
484,000 for Fee, for Nafisa Collier, very much so deserved, as we know. 446,000 for Aaliyah Boston. I mean, huge, massive numbers. And I mean, I think for Fee, like Fee's numbers being up there, that's a clear, it's not just like it's Caitlin, Aaliyah, Lexi. It's not just going down the line of the Fever. It's clearly this has brought attention to the players, and Asia's number 4 on that list. But you do have this weird thing going on where there's Sophie Cunningham and Lexi over people like Jonquil Jones and Alicia Gray and Nneka Ogwumike and Alyssa Thomas and Jackie Young and Ryan Howard and Brittany Sykes, who is in the Mystics conversation, incredible. But the thing too that's weird about that part is that in terms of the All-Star game and the players that get involved here, the fan vote counts for 50%. And so, in 2023, okay. In 2025, does that still work?
It's a great question.
Maybe not.
It's something that I think every sports league is reckoning with, and it's why the Pro Bowl, I don't want to quote it because I don't know the exact number, but I think it's similar. It's like 25 or 40. Like, it's not the entire basis of the selection for an all-star game. But yeah, no, and I think that there's going to have to be some coaches selections like what they have in Major League Baseball, because like unfortunately, like Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham are going to, by virtue of they are on national television because they play for the Indiana Fever more than most other players. Although, hey, shout out League Pass, shout out NBA TV. They're trying in these streets. They're trying to get more teams and more games on air across the country. Like, like people are more familiar with them. They don't realize what Brittany Sykes has been at the forefront of this Mystics revolution, because everyone hears about Sonia Citron because she played at Notre Dame, and everyone forgets that Brittany Sykes was hurt for 2 years and now has refound her game. And it's unfortunate, but I think that's where you would have to restructure it. You're going to have additional selections to begin with. You're at large, but B, maybe you need to drop the number a little bit. But I'm really glad that we're wrapping this week's starting 5 with that, Rebecca. That's a great call. From 36,000 to 500,000, and the voting's not even done yet. That's awesome.
It's not. Yeah. And so I will say that there is the 25% of the vote goes to the media, 25% to the coaches, and then there's coaches that pick reserve players. So, hopefully you can get a little bit more of that evening out. And I think maybe the numbers motivated some other people to vote. I vote every day, but I'm not always voting Caitlin in, by the way. I'm just saying. But like,
you don't have to. Everyone else is. So
exactly. I'm like, it's fine. But I vote Brittany Sykes in there. Alicia Gray, silently
could be in the MVP conversation. We talked about it last week.
Yeah, certainly could. But like maybe the other fans that aren't voting as much, maybe it's a little motivation to be like, okay, maybe we need to start putting some in. And some of the other teams like the Storm and the Mercury that maybe people aren't watching as much. I don't get to watch them a lot because they're on past my bedtime. But people like Satu, just, and one of our old Fever friends, Erica Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who stepped in Kelsey stepped in for Erica? Somebody stepped in for
last year. Yes. Kelsey Kelsey stepped in for Erica. Yeah, I forget exactly what that was, but one of them got stuck because of a Delta mishap.
Yeah. So I think for the skills challenge or something like that. And so, and I mean, Erica's been an all-star and all that jazz, and I might bring her up later, but just like some of these players that people might not even see as often because they're on so late, that aren't getting into that conversation because, yes, like you said, you have all these other teams that are on the national stage a bit more.
What's funny is as we progress to this week's beef of the week, which Rebecca has handpicked and hand selected for you all, it should be noted that Mitch and I recorded the podcast last week, sans producer Dimitri. I left my home office. I went out to the living room, and about 18 minutes later, Marina Mabry belly bumps Caitlin Clark. And and I literally texted Mitch and I said, "Oh my God, why is this happening after we've already recorded the pod? This is obviously the beef of the week." And yet, Rebecca Kopelman, there was even more beef to be had in the W this week. The floor is yours.
Yes. I was seeing this circulate a few days ago, and then an apology came around. So we will address that part. But Angel McCoughtry was a Rookie of the Year, first pick in the WNBA, two-time Olympian, WNBA champion, I think won MVP in the WNBA finals. I was on the Let Her Shoot pod, and with two other women I do not know, I apologize. But she started talking about players who have popularity and get drafted, and our coaches paying attention to their popularity online, and literally said, if Haley Van Lith did not have or only had 10,000 followers, would she be in the W? And then they agreed that she wouldn't, and she's like, well, if so and so was dating an NBA player and had all these followers, like maybe they would be getting this attention. And first and foremost, we know that making it through training camp in the W is not easy. There's a small amount of roster spots, and you're earning that spot. And then to do this and to criticize someone who, as Tyler Marsh put it, said, she's learning a whole new role as a rookie, someone who many players go through this process who, start every single game in college and then come and sit on the bench and don't have that experience ever and then have to figure out their way. Your veteran, million-year point guard Courtney Vandersloot, not million years old, but Courtney
no, it's okay. We've said on this podcast that she is. It's okay. We're rolling. We love you, Court, but we're rolling with the bit that Sloot's 3,000 years old.
Yeah. So, she goes down and all of a sudden you have the weight of that world on your shoulders. We have a questionable coaching arrangement here in Chicago too. And so you're going to judge someone on one of the worst teams in the league record wise. And is she like the tallest player, the biggest player, the fastest player? Absolutely not. But incredibly aggressive. She should not have been guarding Caitlin Clark when she was at LSU. We know this. But a woman who is an Olympian, hello, and also took a team like TCU and
went to the Elite Eight.
They would not be there.
First player, man or woman, to ever bring 3 different programs to the Elite Eight. Yes, part of that is byproduct of the NIL era, but also it's reality. She's the only one who's ever done it.
Yes. And so, obviously she's earned that spot there. And Angel did come back and apologize and said, that she did earn that, everything that she's gotten. And she says that she was just using her as an example and for other players who have that popularity. I don't quite get that exactly. And I don't yes, Paige has a big following, but she also has earned that because of how impressive she is. So has HBL. And so, I'm calling that the beef because I saw that floating around and it just did not make sense to me that her Instagram following or whatever it is had anything to do with the reason why she made it into, 156 women on this in this league.
That's the beef of the week, although Rebecca does have an honorary beef. Go ahead. Let it out.
Listen, NECA was on TikTok last year saying they were going to sort out this whole schedule issue. And yet we have 3, 4, 5 games on at the same time. And then they're all on League Pass. And you can't even, I don't have enough.
There's no quad box for the League Pass.
Oh, and there's no TV app for the League Pass.
That's a big beef of mine. That's a
What were
big
we
sticking
doing in
point
the
for me.
off season, WNBA? First of all, we need some better commercials or like real commercials, make some money. 2, stop playing the same stuff. 3, stop scheduling them all at the same time. And 4, the West Coast teams, I love them. I need to watch them. Stop having the games at 9 p.m. It's too late. It's past my bedtime. I maybe wake up at 2 in the morning, but it's past everybody's bedtime.
We shouldn't have.
Okay.
She's not crazy. She's just a morning meteorologist. That's why she's waking up at 2 a.m., folks.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we've vocalized that here. Actually, I don't know if we ever formally vocalized it, but the lack of an app on smart TVs is definitely got to be the next step. And to your point, the advertising dollars, we're here. Let us know. We can help you,
We're,
WNBA. Like just I've got
we're just
experience in
dropping
built
free money.
I've got experience in building live streams. Just hit me up. Same with producer Dimitri. Before we get to this week's main event, I do want to tell you about our friends at the Sports Podcast Festival. It is coming to the Rialto once again, friends. And don't forget to use code SPF25 for buy one, get one half off on tickets. Be sure to check out etix.com or therialto.com in order to reserve your tickets. It's going to be a great lineup. Of course, the boys, the Joes, Ovius and Gilio will be there. My friends from Split Zone Duo, and a whole heck of a lot more. So be sure if you're in the Triangle, if you're in the Raleigh area, Saturday, August 23rd. I found out I'm not going to be in Miami. I may have to be in Vegas. I may be here. Maybe I'll be there because now there's a possibility I could be. And if I'm there, we're all going to hang out because there's also a special Friday night party that Mitch talked about last week. So be sure to get your tickets to this year's Sports Podcast Festival. It is time for the main event, Rebecca Kopelman. And this week's main event, we're going to have a little stock exchange, if you may. We're going to pick 2 players who you are buying at this point of the WNBA season and who are 2 players that you are selling. Let's start with the buying. Who are your 2 players you can pick from any of the 13 teams in the W?
I picked 2 that are currently, or they're players who both went undrafted. So they were not drafted in the draft. And one is Kayla Thornton, who has been incredible for the Valkyries. And the other is Erica Wheeler, because I don't think anyone imagined that she was going to go from, first of all, she was on a training camp contract with Seattle. I did not think she was going to make the team. I was scared because I was like, somebody needs Erica, and I wish she could have stayed on the Fever. She was making too much money, but maybe the injuries helped her out in that respect. But she has been starting for the Seattle Storm, and they've been killing it. Kayla Thornton's been averaging 15.2 points per game and 7.2 rebounds. Erica Wheeler averaging 11.1 points per game, 3.6 assists, and 3.2 rebounds. And, you know, the fact there are several women who are in the league who are still playing who weren't drafted and got brought in. But I think for a lot of Fever fans or people who are only watching the Fever, they knew Erica as one who would step in very occasionally. And maybe wasn't always the bestest at handling
Veteran
the ball.
leadership, though. Veteran leadership.
Definitely more of the hype woman and the lead of the Caitlin Clark de-escalation committee. So we would sometimes go from like, wait, is Erica a baller or like, is she like, what's going on? And she's been in this league for what, like 10, at least 10 years. Yeah. She's getting up there. But incredible. And so was Kayla Thornton, who was with the New York Liberty, on the championship team last year, and now has been leading this new franchise team here, and has been just taken over, and new expansion team. And I saw a stat that was like, it's one of the best starts for an expansion team in the W, and they may just take over that record with how well they've been doing. And it's just been really incredible to see. And she has been the one really consistent spark on that team.
Hey, Mitch and I put them 6th in our power ranking episode last week. So if you haven't heard that episode, be sure to go check it out because, yeah, we are very much on the Valkyries They are firmly trending upward. We would buy them, but we can't buy a team in this week's main event. You can only buy stock in players. And so Rebecca Kopelman is buying Kayla Thornton of the Golden State Valkyries, Erica Wheeler of the Seattle Storm. I will take the low-hanging fruit because we've already referenced it. And this is a player who, look, one of the most epic college careers that probably doesn't get talked about enough. And yes, I know I'm basing it off of two shots. She was a pretty consistent player in the ACC though, and that's Arike Ogunbowale. Like, look, I mean, I don't care if it's men or women. Like, she hit two of the most iconic shots. With all due respect to Chris Jenkins, like, she hit back-to-back buzzer beaters at the Final Four in the national championship. Like, I don't think we talk about that enough. And when her brother played here locally with the Jags, like, I always brought it up on the news because I'm like, we need to talk about Arike more. And then last year, this time a year ago, she is second to Asia Wilson in the league in scoring. And again, arrow firmly pointed upward. I know it faded down the stretch. The Dallas Wings ultimately get the they win the lottery, the number one overall pick. Fee Collier emerges in the second half. The Minnesota Lynx win the Commissioner's Cup. They make the NBA Finals. All of a sudden, we're talking about Fee and not Arike, her draft classmate. And then Paige Beckers comes to town. And as we've discussed at length on this podcast, Arike's role changes. Now, it was always going to be, there was going to be some growing pains. But to see Arike Ogunbowale, this was the 3rd and the 6th, drop just 8 points. She was 4 of 10, 4 of 15 from the floor in each of those respective games against the Sparks and the Storm. That is not the player, and that's in 34 and 27 minutes, by the way. That's not the player who we've all grown to know and love. By the way, in 34 minutes, 2 games ago, just 7 points. And these stinkers are unfortunately going to come, I believe, as she and Paige Beckers continue to figure out, hey, who exactly is the ball dominant guard here? With no Maddie Siegrist, how does that factor into the rotation for the time being? But for Arike to drop 27 points in that overtime loss, yes, but still a great showing for the Wings against the Washington Mystics. 8 of 20 from the floor, had 3 threes. I feel like I'm buying stock because I just can't believe they can keep her down this long. And if they do, they'll trade her, and then she'll probably find success with another team.
I think that it's always so easy from the outside to, watch what happened, even, knowing what the Fever went through and seeing how they turned their season around last year. Arike spoke about it on Sue Bird's new podcast. And she was talking about how really, really hard it is when you are rebuilding with a brand new, it's everything. She lost so many players from last year. You then have a new coach, and, as questionable as he may be, it's your coach, and you have this whole new element that you have to work with. And so it's definitely hard because, Caitlin kind of stepped into a pretty similar group to the year before. Sides was already there. And now you're talking about, just a complete top to bottom rebuild. And Arike was used to being the one who had the ball in her hand. And yeah, Paige has been taking more shots. And she's been, I think for the month of June, she's leading all scorers, or she's up there in terms of points per game. So it's, whoever has the hot hand, you feed it, or you got to figure that out. But it's definitely a lot harder than it looks, I'm sure, to figure that whole thing out. But she seems like maybe finding her groove again.
Yeah, and to that point, I can't think that this player is going to just continue to produce stinkers. I don't see it coming. I think that we don't give Kelsey Mitchell enough credit, that she was one of the longest tenured players on the Fever a year ago, had been the number 2 overall pick, was the face of the franchise. And Caitlin Clark shows up, and it's like, okay, now you have to accept that you're the number 3 option behind her and Aaliyah Boston. And in the same vein, Arike Ogunbowale is having to adjust to, it's Paige Beckers' team, and you're just going to have to roll with it. I don't think, as we discussed last week, our beef of the week was the Dejanay Carrington, Coach K. Chris K. He's Coach K this week because they had a good week. Chris K beef, like the Dejanay and Alyssa sideshow, like I feel like that may be hindering this too. I don't want to speak out of turn, but like I can only imagine that's, and then the Tierra McCown of it all. So yeah, I really don't want to put this up and down first half of the 2025 season on Arike, because I believe there's a lot of other external factors that are working against her. And so I'm buying the stock. I am also buying the stock in another player who we already referenced, and that is Aaliyah Nye, the 2nd round pick out of Alabama of the Las Vegas Aces. Rebecca, as you alluded to, she has taken on that Kate Martin role and then some, lethal from 3-point range. Yes, she's only averaging 5.5 points per game as a rookie, but she's the 5th leading scorer on a team that, we forget, did win 2 titles in the last 3 years. I know we don't want to talk about that because we were worried about them for a while there. She is shooting 38.5% from three-point range, 41.4% from the floor, has appeared in all 13 games for the Aces. I can't come away from Aaliyah Nye and Sarah Ashley Barker both having success in the league and being such heralded WNBA prospects and say, why didn't Alabama win more games? Why didn't we talk about Alabama more? I mean, they may go down when all is said and done. They both might make the all-rookie team. And we somehow, some way, watched Alabama in an epic 4 overtime game with Maryland in the NCAA tournament, or double overtime, however many. They played a lot of overtimes in that game. Point being, that was the first time I actually sat down and watched Alabama, and Kevin yelled out. He was like, that girl's a WNBA prospect. That's a W prospect. And I was like, how have all these girls been in Tuscaloosa and no one's talking about it? So,
Damn right.
There we go, Dimitri, our resident Alabama alum, had to chime in on that one. Yes, go for it, Rebecca.
I was going to say that I remember watching that game too, because I think I texted you and I was like, you need to turn this on. Like it was, I think 4 overtimes.
Yeah,
But Sarah was on my list too for the rookie domination, because I mean, she's been putting in a lot. Obviously the Sparks have been riddled with injuries and she's been putting in a lot of time there. And you just have these rookies flying under your radar maybe. And then all of a sudden they're putting in, substantial minutes while you have some vets who are, putting in substantial minutes and then not producing. So it's just very cool to see that happen. And Aaliyah Nye, I think, has been making a statement multiple times, multiple games, and so is Sarah. So it was very interesting because they, came from a school you wouldn't imagine. It was the most draft picks they've ever had for Alabama. Had they ever before? No.
I don't even know, Dimitri. I mean, did they even had they had a player drafted before? I feel like they had to.
Maybe one.
I think I looked this up when Sarah Ashley got drafted. Yeah. I think they've had 4 players in the W in history. That doesn't necessarily mean they've had 4 draft picks.
Right. And that's what's crazy, especially when you consider DeWanna Bonner, War Eagle. People forget that she went to Auburn, and the success that Auburn had previously, although it really hasn't been a lot of recent success, and yet Alabama, recent success, but not nearly as much. I wanted, Rebecca, I don't think you're going to get this reference, so Dimitri, please humor me. Listeners, humor me. I would like to officially christen Alabama women's basketball as the Ole Miss football of women's basketball, in that they produce elite pro talents despite the fact that they never actually won anything at the college level.
I was sitting here thinking, I don't recall our women's basketball fans ever having to be told don't bring Confederate flags into the stadium. So I'm not sure how we're connecting this to Ole Miss. No, I hear you. That makes sense. Although, I do think, to your point, it's been a while, dog. I mean, it was 90? Was it 94? That they lost to Louisiana Tech in the Final Four, and it's been radio silence since then in terms of team success.
Right, and yet you have two players who might be making the all-rookie team this year.
Right.
And you have the men's basketball team obviously reaching heights previously never thought of before, and that only happened once Nate Oates got to town.
Right.
So that's our resident check-in on Alabama. We've gotten our Jaguars check-in. We've gotten our Alabama check-in. We've gotten our Caitlin Clark update. But yes, there's still a little bit of work to do here in this week's main event. Those are the 2 players that I am buying stock in, Arike Ogunbowale and Aaliyah Nye. Rebecca, I know you don't like to bring anybody down, but I need you to tell me, who are the 2 players? I'll let you even say a coach. I'll let you say a team. Who are the 2 players you are selling at this point?
I thought that maybe she would help because she made an impact on the Sparks last year at times, but Kia Nurse has just not been impressing me for the Sky, which we know that the Sky needs some help. They got to find their identity here and figure things out. And sometimes it clicks and then sometimes it just doesn't. Angel had a great showing where she posted the triple-double, but it was against Connecticut. And so you're kind of but she's getting, sometimes 10, 20 minutes, and she's really streaky. It's sometimes she's into the double digits. Most of the time she's not. She's only averaging 6.6 points per game. She is known for her 3-point shooting, and it's not been hitting, occasionally it does. Her oftentimes plus minus is -20. So that's not great. Multiple games was in the -20s. And so girlfriend, like, we need someone to drive the bus here for the Sky. We need some help.
We got a bus driver reference from Rebecca Kopelman. Let's go. She knows the show. She gets the show.
Yeah, it's just, all those pieces when you have, Sloot go down and Ariel Atkins, she's maybe turned a little corner here, and she's been producing and she's been having some better games, but she's been a little bit to our criticism about why Sky fans have to be punching the air when they watch Sonia Citron. And so that'll be an interesting game when I don't believe the Mystics and the Sky have met yet, but when they do, I want to watch that one. But just when you watch what you traded away, and then you see what your struggles going on here with your veteran leadership, I think that's difficult. And I liked watching Kia Nurse. I was impressed with her last year on the Sparks, and now not so much.
And I wonder if maybe that was just the better role for her. And quite frankly, the Sky are just, it's falling. The Sky is falling. And maybe that's just a byproduct of that. Okay. So Kia Nurse, give me one more.
And so
I've got a hot take for mine, but you go ahead first, because I know you're not going to be happy with mine.
I had a little bit of a hot take that I decided to leave off of it. But
let's get spicy. Come on. You never want to say anything bad about anybody. You can give me 3 players you're selling if you want.
Okay. I'll say my hot take. It's Ezzie McNagor. She was killing it last year, and she's not. And now I haven't watched the Storm a lot, but just by the numbers and by what I've seen, just offensive production is like gone. And is it? I mean, and even Dominique hasn't necessarily been like
played all that much. Yeah.
No. And so I don't know what
they traded away another big to Dallas too.
But Gabby Williams, I mean, you could stick her in the stock option. She's been hitting career highs. I mean, she's going to challenge Lexi Hull for that most improved. But like, very impressive. I don't know if it's Gabby that's maybe pulling away from that a little bit. But just a really impressive defensive player, but just not been producing much offensively. And then my other one, which is not probably that much of a shocker, is Lindsay Allen, who was at times a spark for the Sky last year, and Connecticut, who cannot seem to figure it out. She's going 2.4 points per game, and she was, I think, averaging in the double digits last year. I mean, just what's going on? Like, you're supposed to be the, veteran force. And we've seen it. Like, I watch the Fever games, and Natasha Howard has some streaky, like, shooting, and DeWanna Bonner obviously had some of those struggles early on. And it's not like every veteran's going to be like clicking on all cylinders, but like, man, when you were supposed to kind of help there be that force and that driving factor behind a team that has literally just been Marina Mabrey, you would hope that you're doing a little more, but no.
Lindsay Allen was also on my short list of players who I'm selling stock for. I'm going to pick another player on the Connecticut Sun, another one of our favorites here on the Women's Basketball Podcast, because up until this current season, she hadn't played in the W since 2019. That's Haley Peters, who started every preseason game for the Sun. Sorry, Haley. I'm sorry that you have to shoulder my stock down because my stock is so up when it comes to Anissa Morrow. And so you are the benefactor, or lack thereof, to Anissa Morrow finally entering the starting lineup for the Connecticut Sun as the Lord intended, as the prophecy is now fulfilled. And I believe Anissa Morrow now will, if the Connecticut Sun can get this thing on the tracks, will continue to start, will be a pillar as the now former number 8 or number 7 overall pick in this past April's WNBA draft. And so, yeah, very, very much think that, it's been real, Haley. Thank you for coming to play. Thank you for helping create the glide path for Anissa Morrow, but it's her team now, and she will be starting in the front court. So stock down by virtue of stock up for Anissa Morrow. The hot take.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting choice to bring her in after she hadn't played for so long in the league.
It's the Connecticut Sun have a lot of interesting choices, Rebecca, both on the court and off the court. So, hey, Marina Mabrey did miss the most recent game because, well, she was suspended. So, yeah, sorry. Shout out Shore Conference forever. My hot take, and it's very hard for me to say this, given this player did have 18 points, 3 assists last game out, and a win over the Indiana Fever. I'm going to sell the point guard.
Oh,
I'm selling the point guard, and it's nothing against you, Chelsea Gray. It's more so a stock up, just like Haley Peters. It's more so a stock up to the duo of Jewell Loyd and Jackie Young in the backcourt, finding that continuity. And so this is not to say I'm down on Chelsea Gray. This is me saying she's the third option, though, in the backcourt. That this is Jewell Loyd, this is Jackie Young, and they'll rotate her in a little bit. But as Jackie Young really starts to find her footing and Jewell had her first 20-point game for the Las Vegas Aces, it's becoming clearer and clearer that that is your future to begin with. And they have better chemistry on the floor together. So
I think it's interesting you say that, because I was actually talking about how it seemed like Chelsea was maybe starting to find her shot again, and she was getting it, but I did notice there's been a lot of games where like Asia's had more assists than Chelsea, and it's kind of
we've
like,
discussed that. We've discussed that here. Finally, Chelsea Gray is now leading the Las Vegas Aces in assists per game. For most of the season, despite Asia Wilson missing 2 games, 3 games, whatever it was, she was not. So
right. And so it seemed like it was coming back a bit. I know they discussed it on the broadcast yesterday too, that she was, finding that period between Unrivaled and the 3-on-3 and getting back into the 5-on-5 and trying to find her place there. But you have a whole new piece of the puzzle with Jewell Loyd there, and as she has started to kind of get it together, it seems like things are clicking. And we were kind of just talking about, what are those pieces that left? And you had obviously Kelsey Plum, but Tiffany Hayes coming off the bench was huge for Vegas last year, and she's been huge for the Valkyries now. But they've also gone through that little bit of a adjustment phase, and it's I think it was a showing over the weekend that it can work, but they've had some of their struggles, which was not expected. And I suppose we'll just have to see what Chelsea does the rest of the season. But interesting, very hot take.
yeah, very hot take. And again, I think it also stems from, unfortunately, covering the NFL. I live in a world in which if someone is either paid handsomely or you trade major capital for that player, that says that that player is part of your future plans. And that's not to say that the Aces aren't paying Chelsea Gray top dollar for the market, given what it is right now, but they also traded away pretty nice capital to go get Jewell Loyd. And I know Jewell Loyd wanted out of Seattle, but it's clearly says that Jewell Loyd is the future in Las Vegas from my vantage point, unless something is to go awry here in the second half of the 2025 season. So Rebecca is selling Kia Nurse and Lindsay Allen. I am selling Haley Peters. And yes, the point god, Chelsea Gray. That is this week's main event. It is time to make money with Mia. Rebecca, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on my predictions this week. We're playing a little bit of odds with our friends. This is from Hard Rock Bet, because I am not in the state of North Carolina like Mitch Northam, who usually you make money with Mitch. Mitch, by the way, is 5-4 on the season. The freaking Fever had to screw him twice this week on the West Coast. Come on, Caitlin. Help Mitch Northam out. I've got a 3-pack for you this week, Reba. I've got Tuesday. The Los Angeles Sparks at the Chicago Sky. The Sparks are a 4.5-point favorite. I am taking the favorite, LA, on the road. What say you?
I think the way that the Chicago Sky have not been able to really just kind of hold it down, they have some good runs, but then I believe they did come back a bit on their last game. I can't remember who they were playing, Mercury maybe, but they just ended up getting squashed at home. And I think the Sparks have obviously had some of their struggles too, but if Plum Dog's on it, it lights out,
First predicted on the Women's Basketball Podcast that Kelsey Plum would lead the league in scoring, because we called it. Just remember to fly the banner when it actually happens at the end of the year. The Chicago Sky, by the way, have lost 4 in a row, and they are the home team, but I am rolling with the Sparks. On Wednesday, a doubleheader for you. This first game is on League Pass. The Golden State Valkyries host the New York Liberty, of course, lost to the Indiana Fever 2 Saturdays ago. And the Valkyries at home are 9.5-point dogs. But as we've discussed on today's episode, Rebecca, we're high on the gals out at Valhalla, and I am going to take the Valkyries not to win, but to cover that 9.5-point spread.
I think that, the Valkyries are definitely going to give them a run for their money. Something else about New York, and I don't think that this is necessarily consistent with every team that they've played that have now beat them, because they have been on a little skid here. But Jonquil Jones out for 4 to 6 weeks with her ankle. Huge part. There's like some ridiculous stat about like every time JJ gets a double-double, they win. And that was happening for their win streak. Jonquil was not in the game against Indiana, but even when she was the first time they met, Indiana lost by a point or two. Unquestionable call at the end, but I digress. But I think that it could be quite interesting, especially because you're not going to have JJ back, and maybe there's a little bit of that. It might be a little tough in Valhalla. I mean, that atmosphere is wild, and even with Leonie Fevich being out for the Liberty, I was expecting the Valkyries to struggle more with how many players are at Eurobasket, but
yeah,
I don't know what kind of magic that
Caitlin Chen. That's the magic, Rebecca. They brought Caitlin Chen back, and everything's fine.
Everything's fine. But yes, they've got something cooking over there. So it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, so picking the Valkyries, not to win, just to cover a little 9.5-point spread. I think they can keep it within 9 against the reigning champions of the WNBA, the New York Liberty. And our final game in this week's Making Money with Mia, the Connecticut Sun at the Las Vegas Aces. The Aces are 15.5-point favorites. It's a massive number. The Aces obviously bounced back against Indiana on Sunday after a 3-game skid of their own. I am taking the Aces to cover that massive number just because I'm banking on them finding something, and now the Sun will probably somehow sneak out a victory. What say you?
Yeah, I just don't know. The Connecticut Sun just seems to be the one that just cannot get things to click. It just seems like something is up there, that they do not have the pieces of the puzzle that will meld together. Now, Anissa starting and maybe giving them some more of that offensive production and the, spark on defense and everything, perhaps it changes some things a little bit if you change up that lineup and see if things start to work. But it's been tough to watch the Sun.
And we knew that because they are reloading. But yes, a 6-game skid heading into the desert to face the Aces on Wednesday night. So to recap our picks this week, the Los Angeles Sparks, 4.5-point favorites on the road at the Sky. The Golden State Valkyries, I'm taking the Dogs against the New York Liberty to cover, to be clear, to cover a 9.5-point spread. That game is on Wednesday on League Pass. And finally, the Las Vegas Aces, 15.5-point favorites against the Connecticut Sun. And I have the 2-time WNBA champs winning that one and covering that 15.5-point spread. It's almost time to say goodbye. Oh my goodness. We don't want to say goodbye. We've had so much fun with Rebecca Kopelman stepping in for SB Nation's Mitch Northam on this week's The Women's Basketball Podcast. It's time for last call, Rebecca. What did we miss? I know you mentioned JJ's injury, Jonquil Jones, of course. It's very unfortunate. Run us through some of the other storylines we missed, including an update on Fee Collier.
Yeah, I just think that the injuries have been too much this year. I don't know if it's always like this. I feel like it's more than last year that you had also some bigger players that were out for some longer stretches. Obviously, I mean, even Paige was on concussion protocol. Obviously, Caitlin missing games, and then everybody stopped watching the W, or like half the people stopped watching the W. I don't get why, because there's still a lot of basketball, but it's fine. And then Fee goes out, and it looked like not much contact, something with her back. I think I saw is questionable for tomorrow's game. Mm-hmm. And so that is hopefully going to turn a corner there. Now they won without her.
It was close though, against McBride. Great game.
Yeah. Yes. Kayla McBride shot her butt off and just completely took over in the fourth quarter there, as she does, because shooters shoot, and she kept doing it. And so, they can probably, I don't remember who they play, but they can, maybe manage without Fee, though I don't know for how long. So hopefully she's back soon. Dejanay Carrington had a rib injury, so she was out for the Dallas Wings. I think Marina was also out on injury.
Yeah, it was a suspension, and then it was injury, I think.
And then Lexi Held for Mercury, who had been impressively shooting the 3-ball for them, had also been injured, hopefully is back soon. Ray Burrell has been out for a while. Will Cam Brink ever come back? Will the Sparks ever like have their full team together?
I'm
We
hoping
don't
she
know.
comes back when we're in Indy for the Sparks and the Fever. That's
Yes.
what I want the Cam Brink experience to debut in front of our very eyes.
Because I think that will change the Sparks, and Ray Burrell being back too. I mean, Sweet Baby Ray, as Lisa Leslie called her affectionately during the entirety of Unrivaled, she had really impressed me during Unrivaled, I think, and just is a great player and definitely will be a big piece of the puzzle. Kalia Copper coming back for the Mercury was also massive, and she's incredible. Alyssa Thomas, I think, was sidelined for a few games too, and she's been just balling out. But yeah, there have been a number of injuries that have been running their course through some illnesses and such. So some of the big names out there hopefully can come on back. And then DeWanna Bonner is also personal reason listed day to day. One of my silent but deadly players under the radar, Odyssey Sims, has been out for the Sparks and also listed as a personal reason. I hope she comes back soon because I like to watch her. But yeah, so, and then you obviously have like the slew of other injuries that have riddled the W that are season-long, season-ending injuries. Nika Mule maybe, hopefully comes back at some point. Georgia Amore, Kaylou Samuelson, and so many players that we didn't even get to see this season. So hopefully that all stops. And then we can do some more research on why everybody gets hurt in the ACLs, especially.
Yes.
Because they say there might be a connection between menstruation cycles and ACLs. So
that's something that I've been like wondering since my days of playing soccer growing up and like watching 4 teammates all tear their ACL before my very eyes and being like, there's got to be something going on here. We need the science to come out because it's 2025.
Yeah, we need research.
Yeah, we need the research on that. To your point, I hope that this doesn't turn into to your point about Chelsea Gray. It took her some time to transition from 3-on-3 of Unrivaled to the 5-on-5. Like, I hope that that's not everyone's saying they're playing too much basketball because so many of these women were playing overseas before an Unrivaled was created. Yeah. And we didn't see quite this rate of injury like we have seen this season. I think it's just a one-off, but it's unfortunate nonetheless.
I will say that it's another, point on there to expand the roster sizes, which is needed. I know your G League conversation as well that you bring up almost weekly about, the need for having these extra players that then we can avoid maybe some of these injuries and compensate. And, the hardship contracts are great. And Ari McDonald still sitting out there in the void is interesting. We'll see what happens there. But just the fact that you have all these players go down, it can change the whole, perspective of a team when you have someone who has an injury like Sloot and your veteran point guard that you thought was going to lead your team is perhaps, not only season ending, but career ending injury. And so lots of reasons why research and expand those rosters. And then maybe another like little side note to all of this, and I think related, is the whole ref conversation and the fact that there does need to be some additional consistency. And it was interesting because, different coaches have been saying things. I know that Stephanie White's been a little harped on for bringing up the officiating over and over, but Becky Hammon also brought it up about how they know, and they said it at Valhalla, that they did the same sort of game plan on Caitlin. They know Caitlin doesn't like the physicality. I was kind of doing a little bit of looking into it, but there was Rebecca Lobo had talked about how hard it is to kind of officiate Caitlin because she creates space to get her shot off. But then you also have players who are hand checking her and grabbing at her and holding onto her jersey and doing these things where, so it's like, if you're not going to call, like you can't call the push off if you're not calling all that other sort of contact. And so there's a lot of things that probably need to be cleaned up somehow. And obviously, Caitlin's being picked up the entire length of the court. And sometimes you see, the full court press at some points during the game, but the fact that Hammond also brought up the fact that their game plan is physicality, but they know that at some point there may be a change in the officiating, probably needs to be, because to round out the injury conversation, it's for safety of these players, and also to avoid the underlying beef that we don't need to keep bringing up of what happened with the Fever and the Sun. So I hope that there's some resolution to these things, and hopefully the fact that it's being talked about is obviously meaning that there's a lot of people paying attention, and there's always room for growth.
I feel like we've touched them all on this week's The Women's Basketball Podcast with Rebecca Kopelman as our guest co-host. However, there is one name we have not mentioned in your maiden voyage on this podcast, and that's Angel Reese. She was our Her of the Week last week. Let's end with Angel Reese and her me bounds, because it's a feel-good story, right?
Yeah, I think that I know you guys brought it up last week that she trademarked the me bounds, which brilliant, because why not turn it around? And she does get the boards. It's impressive. She is an incredibly impressive rebounder, and she has been still, she had one game where she only had 2 rebounds. I was kind of surprised, but she came back and had a double-double this weekend. She got her trademark on me bounds, started making merch, and the fun piece of the puzzle now is the proceeds are going towards cyberbullying prevention through her foundation. So full circle.
Did you buy one?
Did
you buy a me bound shirt yet?
I haven't yet. I need to check it out. But I think it's awesome that she is going, straight at the head and
leaning into the bit.
Yeah, 100%. You also have the dude who makes these videos of her whatever low lights, and doesn't show a lot of her highlights either, but does that, and I think he was trying to get a lawyer about it. Well, I mean, I think legally she's covered all her bases, but she is then turning it around and saying, you've been bullying me this whole time. And yeah, there's a lot of people who have a lot to say about Angel, and I think that we need to look at the system that she's in as well, and not just criticize her for what's happening there, but just also at least take in the fact that she's turning this around to something good, because it's not just her that's dealing with it. I mean, any player that out there that is dealing with it, and then to another level of the racist comments that she gets, or any Black woman for that matter that ends up being on the other side of this. I think it's an important thing to highlight, and she's doing it with me bounds. And I know you said we need to see, I don't know if Urban Dictionary has it yet. I meant to look that up, but we'll have to see what the definition that ends up being there officially.
We end with a positive. We end with the me bounds. We end with raising money for preventing, not encouraging,
preventing cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying. Yeah, that's our cue to get out of here. Rebecca, it has been a blast. The first ever podcast that we have done together. Your maiden voyage on the Women's Basketball Podcast. Don't worry, Mitch will be back next week. I think potentially we may have another guest host. I may be out, and we may have another guest host. We're having fun here. It's the W.
It'll be me and Mitch next time. So.
Ooh, I like that. Maybe we do that. I'll be back on vacation next week. We'll see what the lineup entails. Rebecca, I hope you know how to close this one. She's Rebecca. I'm Mia. This has been the Women's Basketball Podcast, and we will catch you next week. Bye. Deuces.